and feel your boundless grace. We ask that you bless us with knowledge and understanding as we study our lessons for today. Help us, dear Lord, to be obedient to our teachers and to be caring and respectful to our classmates. Be with us, inspire us, and lead us to be more like you. May our doings for today bring honor and glory. In the name of Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Good day, everyone. I hope that you are doing well and excited for our first class for this quarter. And today we will have the part 1 of our topic entitled Life Stories. And without further ado, let's begin. We will now watch and listen to a music lyric video. What I need you to do is to listen carefully to its lyrics and pay attention to its message. Are you guys ready? If you are, then let's begin.
Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me, go make yourself some friends or you'll be lonely. Once I was 7 years old. It was a big, big world, but we thought we were bigger, pushing each other to the limits. We were learning quicker. By 11, smoking herb and drinking burning liquor. Never rich, so we were out to make that steady figure. Once I was 11 years old, my daddy told me, go get yourself a wife or you'll be lonely. Once I was 11 years old. Always had that dream like my daddy before me. So I started writing songs, I started writing stories. Something about that glory just always seemed to bore me, cause only those I really love will ever really know me. Once I was 20 years old, my story got told before the morning sun when life was lonely. Once I was 20 years old. Only see my goals, I don't believe in failure, cause I know the smallest voices, they can make it major. I got my boys with me, at least those in favor. And if we don't meet before I leave, I hope I'll see you later. Once I was 20 years old, my story got told. I was writing about everything I saw before me. Once I was 20 years old. Soon we'll be 30 years old. Our songs have been sold. We've traveled around the world and we're still roaming. Soon we'll be 30 years old. I'm still learning about life. My woman brought children for me, so I can sing them all my songs and I can tell them stories. Most of my boys are with me, some are still out seeking glory, and some I had to leave behind. My brother, I'm still sorry. Soon I'll be 60 years old. My daddy got 61. Remember life and then your life becomes a better one. I made a man so happy when I wrote a letter once. I hope my children come and visit once or twice a month. Soon I'll be 60 years old. Will I think the world is cold, or will I have a lot of children who can bore me? Soon I'll be 60 years old. Soon I'll be 60 years old. Will I think the world is cold, or will I have a lot of children who can bore me? Soon I'll be 60 years old. Once I was 7 years old, mama told me, go make yourself some friends or you'll be lonely. Once I was 7 years old. since I was 7 years old.
And that's the song entitled 7 Years. On it, we learned how the main character or persona lived, starting from his early days as a 7-year-old kid, wherein he started to know more about life, till his 11 years of age, where he started to having this kind of vices that are mentioned on the song. On 20 years old, where he aspired to reach his goals in life. On 30, when he attained those goals and he can say to himself that he got a successful life, up to the last age, which is 60, wherein he described the world as a cold one. Now, using a song to tell our life stories is effective and creative. However, for today, we will not focus on creating a song, on telling your life stories. Instead, we will focus on these three main ways, namely a memoir, autobiography, and biography. The story of one's life can be told three ways, as I have just said earlier, and is as per memoir, autobiography, or biography. If you write about your life, it is either a memoir or autobiography. If someone else has written about your life, then it is a biography. These three subgenres of life story look at who we are as humans and the life we have lived. Let's study each one of them to see how writing can relive a life lived. First, we have the memoir, or the partial story of the author's life. A memoir is a French word for memory. To write a memoir is to write what you remember. In a memoir, you became the narrator and the main character. You are the central force of the life story, as you recount what happened in the past and what it means to you in the now. In a memoir, you assume the first-person point of view. You are the I. The memoir is deeply rooted in one's personal experience, which makes it similar to autobiography. In fact, memoir and autobiography are sometimes used interchangeably. William Zinsser, an American writer, literary critic, and teacher, writes a clear-cut distinction between the memoir and autobiography. He says that, unlike autobiography, which spans an entire lifetime, a memoir assumes the life and ignores most of it. And what does that mean? If your life is a cake, a memoir is only a slice of that cake. As with a cake, you can cut your life into more than one slice, thus coming up with several memoirs. Each slice represents a different time in your life. An English historian and writer, Edward Gibbon's Memoirs of My Life and Writings way back on 1796 provides an example of a memoir divided into several slices. He wrote his memoirs at the age of 52. In the following excerpt, Gibbons recounts his infantism and his experience with formal education, from having a private tutor to his admission to the Oxford University. Let's read it. Memoirs of My Life and Writings, an excerpt from Edward Gibbon. As soon as the use of speech had prepared my infant reason for the admission of knowledge, I was taught the arts of reading, writing, and arithmetic. So remote is the date, so vague is the memory of their origin in myself, that were not the error corrected by analogy, I should be tempted to conceive them as innate. In my childhood, I was praised for the readiness with which I could multiply and divide by memory alone. Two sums of several figures. Such praise encouraged my growing talent, and had I persevered in this line of application, I might have acquired some fame in mathematical studies. After this previous institution at home, or the day school at Putney, I was delivered at the age of 7 into the hands of Mr. John Kirkby, who exercised about 18 months the office of my domestic tutor. One day, reading prayers in the parish church, he most unluckily forgot the name of King George, his patron, a loyal subject, dismissed him with some reluctance and a decent reward, and how the poor man ended his days, I have never ever been able to learn. A man who had thought so much on the subjects of language and education was surely no ordinary preceptor. My childish years and his hasty departure prevented me from enjoying the full benefit of his lessons, but they enlarged my knowledge of arithmetic and left me a clear impression of the English and Latin rudiments. My studies were too frequently interrupted by sickness, and after a real or nominal residence at Kingston School of near 2 years, I was finally recalled on December 1747 by my mother's death. In her 38th year, I was too young to feel the importance of my loss, and the image of her person and conversation is faintly imprinted in my memory. The curiosity which had implanted in my infant mind was still alive and active, but my reason was not sufficiently informed to understand the value or to lament the loss of 3 precious years from my entrance at Westminster to my admission to Oxford. Instead of repining at my long and frequent confinement to the chamber or the couch, I secretly rejoiced in those infirmities which delivered me from the exercises of the school and the society of my equals. And that's an example of a memoir written by none other than Edward Gibbon. We saw in this memoir how Gibbon transitioned his life from his early childhood up to the point where his mother died, right? Not everything from his life was said in the memoir, but only those who are memorable to him. And that is one of the main difference between a memoir and autobiography. Now, a good memoir invites the readers to contemplate with the narrator the remembered events and their importance. A good invitation includes vivid descriptive details, a plot that moves from scene to scene, a conversational tone, and a central theme that demonstrates the writer's transformation. To accept that invitation is to read into the private and intimate moments of the memoirist. Afterwards, your literary mind will also become filled with memories of the recounted events by the writer. Now, let's go back again to the memoir written by Edward Gibbon. It is surprising to learn that the big, plump, and imposing adult Gibbon was a sickly child. If you're going to look at for his pictures, you will see how that image of him is not so unbecoming from a very sickly boy from his memoir. Cultured and very scholarly, the young Gibbon manifests dislike of schools and the company of the educated and the culturally refined of the English society. These are just some of the traits that Gibbon wrote with honesty and a firm grasp of recall in his memoir. He provides readers with a diligent and intimate examination of his formative years and adulthood. Gibbon was a British historian and politician. His most important piece of writing is the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, his memoirs of my life, and writings. That's just the what we have read earlier, although it is just an excerpt or a part of it. That is considered as a great literary masterpiece for its frankness and intellectual depth. And we saw how frank the memoir is to us, the readers, wherein we saw how Mr. John Kirkby lost his job and his passion in what he is doing just because he forgot a name. Yes, although it is not just some name, but come on. everybody forgot sometimes, right? And there was frankness that made this memoir of Mr. Gibbon so memorable to its readers, and so it was considered as a great literary masterpiece. Now, another memoirist is a guy named Arminius Vambery, a Hungarian traveler and Orientalist scholar who described his memoirs as outlines and short sketches of his youthful adventures. He wrote The Story of My Struggles, the memoirs of Arminius Vambery, way back in 1904. Upon learning that readers were more interested in the story of his youth than his traveling writing, aware that biographical writings tend to self-glorify, Vambery did not hesitate to inform his readers that if such short sketches have provoked interest, how much more if he had written a whole picture of my life. Now, let us see what makes Vambery's sketches appealing to the readers on this another example of a memoir entitled The Private Tutor, where Vambery provides a broad outline of his education as a private tutor. The Private Tutor, an excerpt from Arminius Vambery. By teaching we learn, says the Latin proverb, and according to this, I must have had the very best opportunities for acquiring those scientific accomplishments necessary to the attainment of the object I had in view. Nevertheless, it was with a heavy heart that I left the school, where I ought to have remained to finish the regular course of my studies, and went out into the world as a wild student, without discipline, without system, without even the supervision which my age and experience demanded. Paying on a visit to my uncle, I first made the acquaintance of Mr. von Petrikovich, a small landowner and postmaster. He was a clever and prejudiced and worthy man, who had his eye on me for some time because of my readiness in foreign languages, and he now engaged me as tutor, or rather, as teacher of languages to his 2 sons. I was to receive full board and a salary of 150 florins, a very modest honorarium in keeping with the very modest services which I was able to render. For apart from a knowledge of Hungarian and Latin, my learning was very deficient, and as regards my office of prefect, such was my title, I was rather pupil than master. Mrs. von Petrikovich, a highly accomplished woman, who had been brought up in very aristocratic surroundings and thought a great deal of good behavior, manners, and dress, soon found to her grief that the prefect, in spite of his linguistic accomplishments, was a very unpolished individual, who could scarcely be expected to teach her sons drawing-room manners. She therefore undertook the difficult tasks of first educating the tutor, and the trouble the good lady took to instruct me on all possible points of etiquette, showing me how to handle my serviette, fork and knife at table, how to salute, walk, stand, and sit, was indeed a brilliant proof of her kind-heartedness. It was indeed unpardonable thoughtlessness which had thus led me into debt, and which cost me dear. Was it because for the first time in my life I enjoyed the comfort of living free from care? Was it this that so enthralled my senses and captivated my whole being? Or was it the outcome of some hidden frivolous trait in my character? I cannot account for it. All I know is that I felt very miserable when in the autumn of 1851 I went to Pest with Mr. Petrikovich, this worthy man having taken his sons there to attend the public school. Thus, I left the quiet haven of the Petrikovich's home, and found myself once more launched on the stormy sea of wretchedness and disappointment. The Private Tutor, an excerpt from Arminius Vambery's The Story of My Struggles, the memoirs of Arminius Vambery, written way back in 1904. Now, with the idea of sketches as a binding theme of his memoir, Vambery highlights mistakes he committed, which made him guilty, but nonetheless unable to explain why. Nor did he make any excuses. He simply says, "I cannot account for it." He chooses honesty over effort to delve into them to supply the missing facts. As a sketch, readers won't know how he looked like or how he dealt with this feeling. Nevertheless, his simple and honest words clearly convey such feelings. And that is how honesty is really needed on writing a memoir, on writing your life stories. You don't want to make up things. You want to tell your readers what really happened based on how you recalled it. Now, Judith Barrington said on her writing the memoir way back on 1997 that the events as you remember them will never be the same in your memory once you turn them into a memoir. For years, she have worried that if she turned all of her life into literature, she won't have any real life left, just stories about it. And it is a realistic concern. It does not happen like that. She is no longer sure if she remembers how it felt to be 20 and living in Spain after her parents died. Her book about it stands now between her and her own memories. When she tried to think about that time, what comes to mind or to her mind most readily is what she wrote, and she have no idea if that is more or less true than the original memories. You see, when we write things about our past and we turn it into our memoirs, we as human beings tend to confuse it as the real thing that happens. As you all know, we have a very limited memory. We have a very limited attention span. In fact, that if you're going to watch a video, your attention span is more likely to be 10 to 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops, or max. So, how can you somewhat recall something that happened way back when you were still a child? Unless, of course, it is something that is very memorable to you. But, as you write or as you wrote a memoir, things tend to get so convoluted in a way or in a manner that after a few more days, weeks, or years, you might have this feeling that Miss Judith Barrington had, that she doesn't even know what is real anymore. What really happened way back when she was living on Spain? Was it the thing that she remembers on her mind, or was it on the memoir? Or is it both? That is how powerful a memoir is. It makes us the authors of it, and you guys as a future author of a memoir, somewhat hesitant whether what we remember is real or not. Was it still the real image of what happened way back then? Was this memory of mine still the truth? Or was it just tainted? Or was it influenced by the memoir that I wrote? Now, in other words, memory is not exact and precise. Factual details might be imprecise unless verified in written sources such as letters, diaries, or photographs. But don't be discouraged, nor force yourself to remember. Your literary mind shapes these incomplete details. Memoir, therefore, preserves those events in your life that might be forgotten. It completes something in your life that might have remained incomplete had you not written a memoir. Nevertheless, a memoir remains a partial life story of the person who wrote it. And that is a memoir. Now, let's talk about autobiography. An autobiography, or the complete story of the author's life. As a term, autobiography is a combination of three Greek words: autos, or self, bios, or life, and graphe, or writing. Simply defined, autobiography spans the life of the writer from birth to present. Early childhood has already prepared us to tell an autobiography. No wonder we have a literary mind. Around the age of 3 or 4, you begin to build the autobiographical memory. You start by telling others some life experiences, and these are filed in your store of memories. During adolescence, you start shaping your identity by telling others what you want to be upon growing up. It is during teenage years you start to become the author of your life story. Now, as you become a young adult, you are more aware of changes in your life. These changes develop into significant life events in the story of your life. In turn, these significant life events become part of your immediate past, and you have a sense of how they have influenced your present life. In middle age, when you have lived half of your life, you begin to reflect on your failures and accomplishments. By this time, you begin to think if your storyline fits with how you planned it in the past and how it turned out in the present. For some, life may have become better than before. For others, it might have turned out worse, and it might inspire them to change their storyline by making their life better. By the time you reach old age or nearing the end of your life, it will become clear to you that your life story has beginning, middle, and ending. And that is the autobiographical memory of each and every one of us. We start from our age 3 or 4, wherein we are starting to build our autobiographical memory, and right now we are already done on our teenage years. I am done with my teenage years, and then I am somewhat a young adult right now, and you guys listening right now, you are still on your teenage years. So if ever that you're going to write an autobiography, then what you need to cover up is from the earliest age of your life as you remember, which is somewhat 3 or 4 years old, up to the age that you are living right now. Either you are 17, 18, or even 16 years old. Now, one's life story is, of course, a private affair. So why write it for others to read? When you read an autobiographical work, you become intimately acquainted with an entirely new person. This person could be someone famous, a well-known public figure whom you wish to know more about. The person could also be someone obscure, whom you would not have known about had you not read his or her autobiography. Remember that to write one's autobiography is to publicly share one's life. Some write autobiography to write public perception about them. Mark Obama, the half-brother of the US President Barack Obama, wrote An Obama's Journey, My Odyssey of Self-Discovery Across 3 Cultures way back in 2014. Because, as he said, I wanted to set the record straight. I wanted to tell my own story, not let people tell it to me. Part of setting the record straight is to counter Barack Obama's memoir, Dreams from My Father, which is written way back in 1995, which omits references to their alcoholic and abusive father. Obama's father, in fact, killed a man, and eventually killed himself while driving drunk at the age of 46. No, President Obama did not lie. He chose what truth to tell in his memoir. Most autobiographers choose epiphanies, or recalled moments or events later realized to be significant. Keep in mind, these life moments are meaningless by themselves. It is up to the writer to assign meaning to them. Pay attention to the manifestation of epiphany in the Confessions of St. Augustine, written in 401 AD, which is considered to be the first complete autobiography. Well, of course, Since this is an autobiography by St. Augustine, we cannot read the whole or the entirety of it since that will consume a lot of time. So right now, we're just going to read a part of it or an excerpt of it. Now, let's begin. The Confession of St. Augustine, an excerpt written by none other than St. Augustine. For what would I say, O Lord my God, but that I know not whence I came into this dying life? Shall I call it, or living death? Then immediately did the comforts of thy compassion take me up. As I heard, for I remember it not, from the parents of my flesh, out of those substance thou didst sometime fashion me. For neither my mother nor my nurses stored their own breasts for me, but thou didst bestow the food of my infancy through them, according to thine ordinance, for they willingly gave me what they abounded from with thee. For this my good from them was good for them. This I since learned, thou through these thy gifts within me and without, proclaiming thyself unto me, for then I know but to suck, to repose in what pleased, and cry at what offended my flesh, nothing more. Thus, little by little, I became conscious where I was, and to have a wish to express my wishes to those who could not content them, and I could not. For the wishes were within me, and they without, nor could they by any sense of theirs enter within my spirit. So I flung about at random limbs and voice, making the few signs I could, and such as I could, like, though in truth very little like, what I wished. And when I was not presently obeyed, my wishes being hurtful or unintelligible, then I was indignant with my elders for not submitting to me. With those owing me no service, for not serving me, and avenged myself on them by tears. Such have I learned infants to be from observing them, and that I was myself such. They all, unconscious, have shown me better than my nurses who knew it. And lo, my infancy died long since, and I live. Now, born on 354 AD, in the town of Tagaste, the northern coast of Africa, now known as Algeria, St. Augustine's turning point in life occurred to him at the age of 32 years old, when he converted to Christianity. Thus, his faith and belief in God became the theme of his autobiographical memory. Along that theme, his epiphany converted his mother's breast milk into God-given food that nourished his infancy. From this, confessional writing was developed, and as we all know, confession is a style of writing that expresses or exposes the most intimate and hidden facts about the writer, particularly those considered as taboo, forbidden, or sinful. St. Augustine's autobiography is regarded as an outstanding example of a confessional writing. St. Augustine wrote his autobiography when he was 43 years old. In contrast, Amelia E. Barr wrote hers at the age of 82 years old and 5 years before her death at the age of 87. A prolific British novelist, Barr did not count her life in years, but in days. She titled her autobiography as The All Days of My Life, an autobiography, and it was written on 1913. It begins with the opening chapter, The Borderland of Life, and in the last chapter, The Verdict of Life. Now, let me read it to you. The Verdict of Life by Amelia E. Barr. Old age is a verdict of life. I am now an old woman. Many people tell me so, and there is the indisputable evidence of my 82nd birthday, 29th of next March, but truly I am unconscious of being old. My life here is so simple that I have never as yet met either business or social demands I was not able to fulfill without any sense of effort. My day's work is as long as it was 20 years ago, and I have quite as much pleasure in it now as I had then. I have rarely a headache now. I was rarely without one then. I enjoyed my food, especially my breakfast, and the eminent physician Brunadel of London told me that an enjoyment of breakfast was an excellent sign of general well-being. I sleep 7 hours every night, neither more nor less, except under some unusual circumstances, but I never fail to be 10 hours in the restful and recuperative freedom of night silence and darkness. I have made my living for 42 years in a stooping posture, but I am yet perfectly erect, and I ascend the stairs as rapidly as I ever did. I am more free from pain than I have ever been for many years. A touch now and then of rheumatism reminds me that I am subject for mortality, and a gray hair here and there foretells the hand that shall finally prevail. But life is still sweet and busy, and my children talk of what I am going to do in future, as if I was immortal. Also, my long true friends in the daily press do the same thing. They tell of what I am writing or planning to write, far more than of what I have done in the past. Happiness? Yes, I will certainly let the word stand. My old age is very like this fine October day, calm, restful, and fair in its own beauty. Indeed, both in body and mind. I have warmed both hands at the fire of life. I have drunk every cup, joyful or sorrowful, life could give me, but neither my soul nor my heart is old. And that is the verdict of life, a part of the autobiography written by Miss Amelia E. Barr. Now, being a complete life story, autobiographies give the reader a holistic picture of who, what, and how the writers became such a person. Their autobiographies express their inner thoughts, such as their accounts about the past, which are carefully selected and written with the use of reflection and insights. Remembering is not only for the sake of recreating past events, but also for transmitting lessons about life itself. The autobiographers supplement the process of recalling their past life with journals, diaries, photographs, memoirs, or interviews. This helps in giving a more accurate account of one's life story. In writing autobiography, you are more of a truth seeker than a truth teller. As you write your own life story, you will eventually discover the meaning of your life. As others read it, they may also find the truth of their own lives as they draw lessons from yours. Being a famous or notorious person, people would really be interested to read about your life. This is also enough reason to write an autobiography. But the most important reason for writing an autobiography is to assert your life's significance, to serve as an inspiration to others. Now, let's all remember that just like how your own life story matters, other people's life story also matters. So let's be respectful and appreciate their own life story. And that's it for today, our lessons. Once again, we discussed memoir and autobiography. And let's just show respect to other people on their lives, because that's their life, okay? We cannot do something about that. The best thing that we could do while reading a person's life is showing our respect to them, showing how happy we are that they share their life to us. Because just like what I said earlier, your life is a private matter, okay? And having the courage to share your life to other people is commendable. So we as readers should show our respect to those people who are sharing their lives. Remember, respect begets respect. And you, one of these days, will also write your own life stories one way or another. And if you want to be respected from those past events or experiences of yours that you're going to write, then I suggest that you show respect to others' people memories also. And that's it. Thanks guys for watching. Once again, I'm still using the book that I've told you last quarter, the creative nonfiction written by Lorna Q. Israel and published by Vibal as my main source of information from our discussions. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye and thank you.
Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me, go make yourself some friends or you'll be lonely. Once I was 7 years old. It was a big, big world, but we thought we were bigger, pushing each other to the limits. We were learning quicker. By 11, smoking herb and drinking burning liquor. Never reached, so we